This is the third lecture for Chapter 19, and we're going to start off looking at some nice lungs. Very nice. Look at that. Well, as you can see, the lungs on the left-hand side, that is your, I guess you would say, normal or healthy-looking lungs. And the ones on the right are a person who died of emphysema. And it doesn't specify, but I would imagine there's some smoking going on there. I'm not sure. But it just can show the effects of having a elevated level of air pollution. So we have the Clean Air Act, which that's supposed to fix all these things, right? No, not necessarily. I mean, it was put in place and it has some good intentions, but the follow through on it, especially in the last 20 some odd years, has really been not as good as it could be. And one of the reasons why is kind of like our health system is designed more on treating than prevention. So same idea here. You know, we focus a lot more on cleaning things up than preventing them from happening in the first place. And there's a variety of reasons you can see on here that we haven't necessarily done as well with, but you should take a look at those. A couple more for you. Interesting that airports and planes, and I understand a lot of this, you know, it's important that planes fly, and that's our main focus. But as far as their efficiency or their regulations in regards to air pollution, we probably would like to look at that, you know, the best we could. But anyways, here's a list more of some of those that you should take a look at. So two methods that we can use for controlling the particulate matter that comes out of coal burning power plants. One of them is electrostatic, so we charge the particles that are coming out of the plants, the particulates, and therefore we can collect them based on the charge, so we can pull them out. The other one is with a scrubber, in which they're kind of like sprayed out. So then we just kind of settle it out and we collect that material. And it's a great method. It works. Both of them work very well. We might have some percentages listed over here somewhere. 99%. Look at that. Electrostatic precipitators removes 99% of the matter. So that's excellent. Removes a great deal of these particulates that come from the process. Of course, we have to have this process. It works well. But you can see, yeah, it does cut down a little bit on the efficiency of the plant if you're using some of that energy, but it is kind of, I would say, the cost of doing business. The scrubber, not quite, but I would say it's pretty darn close to about as good, but it does remove a lot of the particulates out of the gas. So some methods as far as some things we could do to reduce the amount of air pollution that we deal with. You know, some of these are really good benefits that we have. You know, cars are, you know, they emit 75% less emissions than they did once upon a time. And if you have an old car at home, a really like collector's car, it is interesting when you pop the hood and take a look at the difference. You look at a car from 1970 prior. You open the hood and pretty much what you see is an engine. That's about it. Today's car, you pop the hood and you have all sorts of gizmos. It's full. And it's very difficult for the average person to work on a car because of all the emission standards, materials that are within a car. Okay. We mentioned this earlier about indoor air pollution. It's not as heavily regulated, especially on a personal level, than the outdoor areas because, well, it's personal property, I guess, at that point. But some standards should be set up because that's mostly where people spend their time is indoors, and you know we see effects of that. Okay, you can read through those on your own. So I think we're moving over a little bit over into global warming and climate change. Looking at one of the nice, interesting examples is sometimes the climate does cool, and it has quite a bit historically. But when you take a look at 1991, scientists were actually able to run a little real experiments. The Mount Pinatubo exploded and put a whole bunch of particulates into the atmosphere, and the global temperatures actually cooled for a little while. And it had to do with this particulate matter that was absorbing and blocking out the Earth's rays. And so we kind of like to think of global warming as something that's going on right now, but it has cycled historically for a very, very long time. This is the temperature is supposed to go up and down. The issue is that, you know, why is it happening right now, and are humans somehow involved in this process? So that's kind of our debate, and we're going to look at some numbers here in just a second. So let's start over here with this first graph. And as you can see, if you just look at it, there's a trend. It's up and down and up and down, up and down. So we shouldn't be too surprised. And obviously we're sitting here on the end over there, so we just happen to be at a high point there. But if we kind of look at the last 130 years or so, we see that this is definitely a continuous trend that we see. This is going up. The temperature is going up. So again, we're at a high point, so that's all fine. The question is how much are human activities dealing with this, and is it just a natural Earth cycle, or are we affecting it? So same idea, different picture, that temperatures are going up. Okay. So one thing that we have looked at is, you know, making comparisons to today to the past. And so one of the things that scientists can do is they can look at air bubbles that have been trapped in ice, and that gets us a look at the past. What was the atmosphere like thousands of years ago? So that's what we're doing here, looking at the amount of CO2 that's trapped in gas bubbles from thousands of years ago. So when we take a look, we're looking here from thousands, so this is 160,000 years ago, over the present. And what's really interesting when we take a look at this, there is a direct trend between carbon dioxide and temperature. You can see how, you know, as the carbon dioxide goes down, the temperature goes down. But notice how the amount of carbon dioxide does go down continuously up until about where humans start buggering around with fossil fuels. And that makes sense to me because, you know, as plants grow and, you know, you have phytoplankton, they eventually will start storing carbon in fossil fuels, and these things also get buried in the bottom of the ocean in carbon-containing compounds. But we started again grabbing some of these things and putting them back into the atmosphere, and we have seen a direct, quick change with temperature in regard to that. There is a direct trend that we're seeing. So we are and should be taking a look at that. So just changing our focus, looking at the amount of CO2 that we're pumping out there. Let's go ahead and blame China. They put out more carbon dioxide than anyone. Well, actually, I guess we're kind of there with them. We put out just as much or almost as much as they do. Interestingly, if you switch it and say, well, how much is it per capita or per person? China falls way down on the list, but we, of course, are still way up there. I don't know what's going on in Australia, why they got so much carbon dioxide. But in any case, you can see that the more developed countries of the world are putting out a lot of carbon dioxide. So something we need to deal with. Looking at this graph here as far as the CO2 in time, again, we're going back quite a while here. And again, we do see kind of a repeating trend. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down over a long period of time. And so this has been the Earth cycle for many, many, many years. So greenhouse effect, three things we look at as far as what affects the Earth's climate. One, obviously, is the sun. That's that big thing shooting energy at us all day long, every day. The other is what's going on inside the atmosphere. Typically within the troposphere, you have UV rays that are being reflected off the Earth's surface, and they're being held in or absorbed by the lower atmosphere. Some gases that are just naturally out there, carbon dioxide, water, methane, a variety of other things that are just absorbing some of this energy from the Earth reflection. And then, of course, you have the oceans, which are storing carbon dioxide, and that kind of acts as a regulator. So the oceans really play a big part as far as the Earth's temperature cycle, because they have the ability through evaporation and condensation for taking in energy and giving off energy, and what they store within them as far as the amount of carbon dioxide that it holds and the amount of carbon dioxide that it gives off. It's fairly complex. All right, let's go ahead and take a break here, and we'll come back with lecture number 4.